Oh dear God, these rankings are going to look very different than what we had a week ago. I mean, obviously, you have someone like CeeDee Lamb plummeting. We have better ideas of what we should expect in Kansas City, in Green Bay. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to break down our top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 2. Of course, you know what I'm going to ask. Go down there, drop a like on this video. I don't even have to tell you to subscribe. We just passed 100,000 subscribers. So I'm sure 99% of y'all watching this are already subbed. But if you want to come out to those live streams that we have every single day, make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button. We're to live stream every single day answering your questions until the end of the season. And of course, if you can't make it to the live stream, just ask whatever questions you have down there in the comment section. I'm going to reply to as many of those as I possibly can. And I can guarantee that I'm going to respond to at least 200 comments on this video. But that should be it. Outside of one other thing, you'll see that we have some player props up on the screen as we go through and talk about these players. Those player props can be found on Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up for Underdog with promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $200. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football rankings. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. But that's it. Let's dive into tier 1. Justin Jefferson going up against Philadelphia. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we'll talk about later on, had a good game against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1. With Jefferson, I mean, the man is maybe the best player. I don't want to go that far. Justin Jefferson looks elite. I mean, here, Kevin O'Connell wants to throw the ball. Kirk Cousins locked onto him, where Adam Thielen was very disappointing week 1. We'll talk about Thielen a little later on. Let's go down to number 2. We are going to have Cooper Kupp. I mean, here with Cooper Kupp going up against the Atlanta Falcons, I think this is going to be a massive bounce back for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, maybe we'll talk about Allen Robinson at the end of this. Let's go down. Jamar Chase at 3. Here with Jamar, I mean, obviously looked fantastic. Could have had a bigger week 1 than actually ended up showing in the box score. I mean, dear God, he made almost the catch of the week, but his toe was this far out of bounds. And then Davante Adams at 4. Davante going up against the Arizona Cardinals. I think this is probably a good matchup. Davante Adams really surprised me a week ago. I mean, I thought that people were crazy to rank Davante Adams over Stephon Diggs going into the year, but he had 17 targets. So if we were saying that the target share was going to go down with the increased competition for targets with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow in Las Vegas, clearly, I may have just been wrong on that one. And then our last wide receiver in this tier, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs crushed against Jalen Ramsey a week ago. Now he's a much better matchup going up against the Tennessee Titans. And obviously, he's playing in the best offense in the NFL. But let's go down to our next tier. Speaking of very good offenses, let's look at A.J. Brown with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, with A.J. Brown, we've always said that he's a wide receiver that you couldn't pass on in drafts because he was a top 5 receiver in the NFL in terms of his talent profile. If we look at his yards per route run, if we look at his target share through his first 3 years of his NFL career, I thought he was an elite player, but I was worried about the situation. I was looking at Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, saying, you know what? There's going to be a decent amount of competition for targets here. But yet again, just like Davante Adams, I was wrong. A.J. Brown made Devonta Smith his little brother week 1, where Smith had a total of 0 receptions. I expect Smith to have a better week 2, and possibly A.J. Brown gets scaled back a bit. But our next wide receiver is also someone that, dear God, he impressed based on my expectations. Tyreek Hill here at 7. I mean, y'all know I'm a massive Jaylen Waddle guy. Jaylen Waddle scores more points week 1, but in reality, looks like Tyreek Hill is the unquestioned wide receiver 1 here. I mean, Tyreek had 12 freaking targets going up against the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Miami Dolphins actually probably trail the majority of this game, and they actually look to have to throw the ball in the second half. They're not going to go out there and boat race the Baltimore Ravens like they did the New England Patriots. But our next wide receiver this year, I think you can move him up if you want to. Deebo Samuel at 8. You know what? Let's do this right now. Let's move Deebo Samuel to 6, because if we look at the running back situation here in San Francisco, no Elijah Mitchell. Yeah, I thought coming into the season, Deebo Samuel couldn't get to 8 rushing touchdowns again, but the weather should be better. He clearly is being used as a running back here in San Francisco yet again. So I still think there are a lot of red flags. I don't know if the passing volume will be there with Trey Lance. I don't necessarily think that Lance looks to just dump the ball off consistently to Deebo, but maybe you give him a bump up with no Elijah Mitchell. But now going over to our next wide receiver, we're going to have Mike Evans at 9. Tough matchup against the New Orleans Saints. We know historically that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, Tom Brady in particular, doesn't perform great against New Orleans. Now, I will say at the end of the day, when you have no Chris Godwin in this offense, I'm operating under the assumption we have no Godwin this week, even if we expect Julio Jones to take a step forward. Mike Evans is the unquestioned alpha wide receiver here. Mike Evans still has touchdown upside. Tough matchup, but increased role with no Chris Godwin. And then our last wide receiver in this tier is going to be Michael Pittman going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Great matchup. And honestly, I was very surprised to see what we had with the Indianapolis Colts against the Houston Texans. I thought the Colts went out there, won this game by 15 points. I thought it was never going to be close. Clearly, they tied. I mean, Matt Ryan had like 50 pass attempts. So yes, Michael Pittman crushed week 1, but I will say not every Indianapolis Colts game is going to go for 70 minutes long. And on top of it, I don't think every Indianapolis Colts game you have 50 pass attempts for Matt Ryan. But now let's go down to our next tier. Someone that I did not like coming into the season, but he was on our buy low video because I think that he's going to come out here and freaking crush Mike Williams. So yeah, I didn't like Mike Williams coming into the year because I viewed him as a very volatile asset that had an extremely high ceiling, but a very low floor. And if I had to go out there and draft him over someone like Keenan Allen, who could consistently draw double-digit targets every single week, I thought it was the craziest thing ever. But now we are sitting in a completely different situation with the Los Angeles Chargers. With no Keenan Allen this week, even if I was not a fan of Mike Williams coming into the season, if you are able to go out there and buy Mike Williams at a discount, that is something you have to do. It's going to be a great matchup against Kansas City Chiefs, where we can assume this is possibly the highest scoring game of the week. You have no Keenan Allen. I know Mike Williams miserably failed a week ago. He's going to be that player with the very low floor, but I am more excited about Mike Williams today than I was coming into the season, because if we remove Keenan Allen, who is the wide receiver 1, or at least that's what I thought coming into the year, I think that Mike Williams does see that expanded target share, even if it didn't happen in week 1. But now our next wide receiver in this tier, someone that really disappointed us last week, Hollywood Brown. Now, I mean, he saved his day. It wasn't horrendous, but I thought Hollywood was in line going up against the Chiefs with nobody else in this offense to go out there and put 25 points on the board. Now, clearly that didn't happen, but Greg Dortch, I don't know. I think what ended up happening is the Kansas City Chiefs defense looked at Arizona and said, okay, well, if we take away Hollywood Brown, they're going to have to beat us with Greg Dortch. They're going to have to beat us with a hobbled Zach Ertz. I think if anything, maybe Rondale Moore coming back into this offense will make us more excited about Hollywood going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think we get a bounce back for this overall Arizona Cardinals offense. You still have no DeAndre Hopkins, so we should still expect that expanded target share for Hollywood. But now dropping down to our next tier, someone that we drafted everywhere, telling you to buy him low before the season started because, while yes, it's a growth situation, his talent profile is beautiful. Jaylen Waddle. Now with Jaylen Waddle, yes, I want to sit here and I want to just look at the raw points that we got. I want to look at the long touchdown we had with Jaylen Waddle, and I want to run some victory laps. But in reality, I am less excited about Jaylen Waddle going forward than I was coming into the season. I thought there was an outside chance that Jaylen Waddle maybe was the wide receiver 1 over Tyreek Hill. I thought that this was going to be a dead even split for the wide receiver 1 job. But if we look at the target distribution between Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle week 1, I mean, yeah, y'all know I'm a massive Waddle guy, but I think we had to lower our expectations. He only had 5 or 6 targets week 1. You had double-digit targets for Tyreek Hill. So even if I am a big Jaylen Waddle guy, even if I stand by the fact that I think he is an elite level wide receiver that people don't respect enough just because he was in the same class as Jamar Chase, I mean, we have to be somewhat concerned that he didn't have a ton of targets. But very similar, another wide receiver that didn't have a lot of targets week 1, but did a lot with those targets, Gabriel Davis coming in here at 14. I mean, with Gabriel Davis, a part of the league's best offense, he may or may not be a sell high candidate for us, because if we're looking at week 1, you had a decent amount of snaps where Diggs was lining up across from Jalen Ramsey. On top of this, with Gabriel Davis, yes, he was very productive, but he didn't have a lot of volume in this offense. And if we're going to go through and look at the wide receiver depth chart right now, you are getting targets to Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie. Add on Stephon Diggs, add on Gabriel Davis. We can assume that maybe Dawson Knox draws some targets going forward. I am concerned about Gabriel Davis. I think him and Waddle are both in very similar situations right now. I mean, I preferred Waddle coming into the year, but still, I think that they are both wide receivers that may not get a ton of targets because they're playing alongside elite level options in their offense, but they're both players with a lot of talent. But now our next wide receiver in this year is going to be JuJu SmithSchuster going up against the Chargers. I think JuJu can go out there and crush. I mean, he was only one target behind Travis Kelce this past week. I was hesitant to play any Kansas City Chiefs not named Travis Kelce or Clyde Edwards-Helaire in week 1 because I didn't exactly know how the target breakdown was going to be there between JuJu, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, and Sky Moore. Well, it looks like Sky Moore is not playing at all early on. He will have upside later. Looks like Marquez Valdes-Scantling is that field stretching wide receiver only playing on the outside. Looks like Mecole Hardman's in this same exact role he was a year ago. So I think we are consistently going to expect 8-ish targets from Patrick Mahomes, arguably the most valuable targets in the NFL. And now our next wide receiver, someone who crushed last week, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 16. I mean, I still stand by the fact Amon-Ra St. Brown, very good talent. I think that he's in a good situation early on. Probably going to ride out this top-end production from Amon-Ra St. Brown at the beginning portion of the year because I am concerned that once we get to the end of this season, if we have Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and Amon-Ra St. Brown all in the same roster, it's going to be hard to draw enough targets to really become that league-winning player. But for the beginning portion of the season, when we have no Jameson Williams, you should be very excited about St. Brown. And now our last wide receiver in this year, someone that I love, Deontay Johnson. I mean, I want to say not a great matchup against the New England Patriots, but at the same time, I mean, we saw Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle do just fine a week ago against New England. With Deontay, he got the double-digit targets that we were looking for against Cincinnati. Obviously, Trubisky doesn't look great, but what I will say is maybe we see some improvement with his second week starting. I mean, it's a completely different organization. And on top of this, I want to monitor the practice reports with Deontay Johnson and his shoulder injury. If it looks like the shoulder's not going to bother him as much in week 2, I think you could maybe make the argument that he should even go higher than this. But now let's drop it down to our next tier where we are going to have Michael Thomas going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Y'all know I drafted Michael Thomas everywhere. This summer, when he had an ADP of the wide receiver 40 on Underdog, I mean, I came out and I was telling you to draft him in every single league. People were mad at me because it was the only thing I would talk about. The only thing I would say is, oh, draft Michael Thomas. Draft Michael Thomas. Draft Michael Thomas. Draft Michael Thomas. I love him. I have him everywhere. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and pretend that week 1 was the best thing we've ever seen. I mean, you did have a considerable amount of volume going over to Jarvis Landry. And if we get Taysom Hill getting some work in the red zone, Taysom Hill still used in this offense, I think that's another player we have to worry about taking away some touchdown upside. So we love the production we had from Michael Thomas week 1. We love that he scored multiple touchdowns, but the target volume wasn't exactly the same with Winston as what we actually had with Drew Brees back in 2019. But now our next 2 wide receivers are guys that I think are very similar. I wish I remember who said it in the live stream. Y'all know I stream every single day. And we had someone in the live stream Monday night saying CeeDee Lamb is Brandon Cooks until Dak Prescott comes back. And I sat here, I'm like, you know what? That is a perfect comparison because both of these wide receivers are great talents. Both of these wide receivers have absolutely no target competition at all. I mean, in Dallas right now, you have freaking Noah Brown as your main target competition. And in Houston, you're going up against Nico Collins. So I think you should be excited about both these wide receivers with their target shares, but at the same time, their offense is going to severely cap the production that we can see. So we're going to have CeeDee Lamb down here at 19. We're going to have Brandon Cooks directly after him at 20. I would love to know if y'all think I'm being a little bit too harsh with this ranking of CeeDee Lamb, but I just think that if we look at the offensive line injuries that Dallas has suffered, I think if we look at the quarterback play that they are about to have, this should be a bottom 10 offense in the NFL. Pittsburgh did not do a good job putting points up on the board against Cincinnati. Obviously, I mean, Pittsburgh did go out there and win, but that was based on the turnovers that the defense was able to go and generate. But now let's drop it down to our next tier. Let's go look at DJ Moore, wide receiver 21, going up against the Giants. I mean, here with DJ Moore, very weird. Baker Mayfield only got him at 6 targets. And if we go through and look at the past 3 seasons with a multitude of different quarterbacks, DJ Moore has had a target share over 25%. Now, I think we get a bounce back for DJ Moore, but it is concerning. Baker looked very bad, and I repeat, very bad the first half of week 1. He didn't look in the direction of DJ Moore. Robbie Anderson actually drew more targets. I think we get a bounce back. I think we can start him as a low-end wide receiver too, but I definitely want to monitor the target distribution in Carolina this week. Now, our next 2 wide receivers, we are going to have the true wide receiver 1 in Denver. I don't want to run too many victory laps right now because I know if I come out here saying that we are a genius for ranking Jerry Jeudy over Courtland Sutton, Courtland Sutton's going to drop 200 yards on us in week 2, but still, Jerry Jeudy 22, Courtland Sutton 23. Concerning to see that Russell Wilson really focusing in on Javonte Williams as the leading target getter. Maybe that was based on Seattle running a lot of zone week 1, taking away the deep playability of these wide receivers. I like Jeudy a little bit more based on the splits that we have had with both Jerry Jeudy and Sutton on the field at the same time, where Jerry Jeudy in games where he's played with Courtland Sutton over the past 2 seasons, including week 1 this year, he's been the wide receiver 1 there. That's why we've been willing to go out on that limb and rank Jeudy higher. But now our last wide receiver in this tier is going to be Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 24. With McLaurin, great matchup against the Detroit Lions, where Philadelphia had no issues at all, just going out there and creating a substantial lead. I mean, the game wasn't nearly as close as the score indicates. I think if we're looking at McLaurin in particular, we do need to be a little pessimistic about the target share he had week 1. Now, I do expect this to get better going forward. I don't expect Terry McLaurin to only have 3-4 targets every single week. But what I will say is, this is the most target competition Terry McLaurin has ever had. Like, if we go through and look at his entire NFL career since 2019, you would probably make the argument that the best receiver McLaurin played alongside wasn't even a receiver. It was probably Logan Thomas a few years ago. But now you have Curtis Samuel. Now you have Jahan Dotson. So then we need to be somewhat concerned, but I do expect a bounce back, and it is a fine matchup. Now, our next wide receiver, starting off our next tier, Christian Kirk, 25. Definitely a riser, double-digit targets week 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still not too impressed with Trevor Lawrence. I'm still concerned that Jacksonville maybe is a capped offense overall. And on top of this, I think if we see more snaps played from Travis Etienne this week than what we had in week 1, we could see Etienne just stealing some more targets away from the wide receivers in general. I mean, obviously, Etienne got benched essentially going into half based on the drop, not only the drop, but at the same time, the fumble right before halftime. So maybe if you expect an expanded role for Etienne as a pass catcher in this offense in week 2, we should scale back our hopes ever so slightly for Christian Kirk. But now our next wide receiver going up against the 49ers, we're going to have DK Metcalf, wide receiver 26. I mean, Geno Smith looked fine week 1, but in reality, if you look at the box score, like the passing volume's just not here in Seattle. And this is what you should come to expect. Metcalf drew targets, but it looks like it's going to be very, very hard for the Seattle Seahawks to go out there and consistently put points up on the board. I understand they won week 1. I mean, Denver fumbled the ball twice at the goal line. I don't necessarily think them winning week 1 changes our mind. I think the Seattle Seahawks are still a very bad offense. Now, going over to our next player, we're going to have Rashad Bateman here. 27. We didn't have Rashad Bateman in our top 30 of our week 1 rankings because I wanted to see what we had from Rashad Bateman. I wanted to see what the target distribution was going to be like. I mean, Devin Duvernay had himself a day, hook 'em horns. I love me some Devin Duvernay. I literally went to college with Devin Duvernay. I want to be rooting for our guy, but at the end of the day, if we're looking at the target distribution, if we're looking at the amount of snaps that Rashad Bateman had, Rashad Bateman's the wide receiver 1. And also, I have a sneaky suspicion that the reason Lamar Jackson's not running is he's playing under a 1-year contract. I mean, if I was Lamar Jackson, I'd go, you know what? You don't want to give me my long-term deal? That's fine. I'll turn into a pocket passer this year. I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to run. I'm going to make sure I don't get injured. And if that's going to happen, maybe you're more excited about the pass catchers in Baltimore overall. But now our next wide receiver, someone that really disappointed. I thought he was going to have a great week 1. Adam Thielen. Now with Adam Thielen, obviously, this is a wide receiver that had to play alongside the best receiver in the NFL, or the best week in the NFL, week 1, Justin Jefferson. I think Jefferson's very good. I think Jefferson's the unquestioned alpha wide receiver in Minnesota. but I'm not necessarily expecting him to have close to 200 receiving yards every single week. I think it gets scaled back a bit. I think Adam Thielen does take a step forward. The Philadelphia Eagles gave up a lot of points to Detroit this past week, so don't think we need to be too concerned about this defense. And our next wide receiver in this tier is going to be Darnell Mooney going up against the Packers. Here with Darnell Mooney, it is so hard to figure out what we should expect. I mean, yes, we can sit here, we can say, okay, well, the weather was disgusting. It was literally a slip and slide out there. Same time, I mean, Justin Fields threw a couple touchdowns. Chicago put points up on the board. Darnell Mooney was not close to being the wide. I don't know. I don't know how to evaluate Chicago right now. I don't know how to evaluate San Francisco. I'm going to try my best not to overreact to the first week we had. Let me know if y'all think it's unfair to put Darnell Mooney at 29. And our last wide receiver inside these top 30, going to be Tyler Boyd going up against the Dallas Cowboys. I think Boyd does have a lot of upside if T. Higgins misses with a concussion. Now, I will get you an update later this week with updated rankings. Once we have more information about T. Higgins, maybe Higgins actually plays. Maybe Higgins is a low-end wide receiver one here. Tyler Boyd's not inside the top 30. Obviously, you're only starting Tyler Boyd if you have no Higgins. But I think that should be it for this video. Of course, thank you so much for checking it out. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to respond to at least 200 comments on this video. I'm going to live stream every single day until the end of the season, so make sure you subscribe. Hit the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you know when we go live. And also, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOG when you sign up. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $200. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football rankings. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. And you'll get a 100% deposit match. Check out all those cool player props and get in drafts with us this year. That's all I got for you. Really hope you enjoyed it. And I really hope you have a great day.